If you're serious about sound design, whether you're coming from music or from programming, you know that feeling. That desire to build something that's truly yours, right from the ground up. I'm not talking about just tweaking a knob. I'm talking about defining the very DNA of your instrument. And today, we're looking at a tool that lets you do exactly that. We've all been there, right? You get this powerful new VST, and it's great, but you're still playing in someone else's sandbox. You're limited by the controls they decided to give you, stuck inside their signal path. But what if you could just shatter that box completely? And this is where it gets really interesting. I want you to imagine loading up a new plugin in your DAW, but instead of some slick interface with knobs and faders, you just get a blinking cursor in an empty file. It's just waiting for you to tell it what to be. Well, that's the wild, powerful idea behind Crescendo. So, what is Crescendo, really? At its core, it's a VST that is itself a programming language. And let's be super clear here, this is not about scripting a few macros. This is about defining the entire audio and MIDI signal chain. We're talking oscillators, filters, sequencers, even complex conditional logic, all from scratch, all in your text editor. To really get what's possible here, you first got to understand the architecture. The best way to think about it is that you're a sound architect. Crescendo doesn't give you a finished house, it gives you the steel, the concrete, the wiring, and the blueprint to build whatever you want. So here's the basic journey your sound takes. It all starts with an input, MIDI or audio, then it hits the common section. We'll get to that. The real magic, though, happens in the layer section. This is where each individual note is born. And finally, all those notes get mixed together and processed in the post section before they head out to your speakers. That's the fundamental order of operations. Okay, so the most important distinction to get is the difference between layer and post. For all you programmers out there, it's pretty simple. Think of a layer as a new object instance that gets created every time you play a note. It has its own local scope. The post section, that's your main render loop. It takes the audio from all those instances and processes it together. It's where you put your global effects, like a reverb or a master compressor. And the thing that ties it all together is the common section. This is basically your global command center. It's where you declare variables, define your sample maps, set up the parameters that show up in your DAW, basically any resource that needs to be shared between your individual note layers and your final post-processing. It's the foundation for the whole project. All right, so now that we have the blueprint, what can you actually build with this stuff? Well, the short answer is pretty much anything you can think of. I mean, the obvious stuff is all here. You can build completely custom synthesizers and samplers, of course, but you can also design your own bespoke audio effects from the ground up. And because you have total control over MIDI data, you can build incredibly smart MIDI processors, crazy arpeggiators, or even entire sequencers that live right inside the plugin itself. When it comes to actually making sound, you've got two main paths. You can, of course, go the sample-based route, loading up waves and building complex instruments, but here's where it gets really nuts. You can synthesize your own waveforms from absolute zero. We're talking about defining a sound by its raw harmonic content, specifying the amplitude, frequency, and phase for up to 32 individual harmonics just to create a single oscillator shape. That is an insane level of control. And this, right here, perfectly illustrates the entire philosophy of this tool. When you import something standard, like a sound font, Crescendo doesn't just hide it in a black box. No, it deconstructs it. It actually translates every single preset into a human-readable text file, showing you the exact code, the layers, the modulators, everything that it takes to recreate that sound. It's like getting the source code for your instruments. An incredible way to learn. Okay, now let's dive into the deep end. We're going to talk about the features that really separate Crescendo from pretty much everything else. This is for the serious audio programmers and sound designers. This is where things get really, really powerful. If, go to, exit. Yeah, you are reading that right. This means you can write conditional logic, if-then statements directly inside your audio processing chain. Your instrument can literally make decisions in real time. You can write code that says, if the mod wheel is over a certain value, go to a completely different part of the code that uses a different filter. Your instrument is no longer static, it's dynamic and responsive. Crescendo also gives you this incredibly fine-grained control over MIDI using what it calls scopes. Think of these like separate MIDI buses. Remote is all the raw data coming in from your keyboard or DAW. Local is for any MIDI messages you generate inside the plugin, like from an arpeggiator you coded. and out is the final MIDI stream that gets sent back out. This lets you build incredibly complex MIDI effects that know the difference between what you're playing and what it's generating. Okay, and for all my experimental composers out there, check this out. Crescendo has full-blown support for microtonality. You can define your own tuning systems from scratch, or you can import standard SCALA and tune files. But here's the real game changer. You can link the active tuning system to a MIDI CC. That means you can perform real-time, fluid shifts between different temperaments, which just opens up a whole universe of new harmonic ideas. So when you put it all together, the architecture, the raw building blocks, and this deep, deep level of engineering control, it all comes full circle. It all comes back to you, the creator. And that is really the ultimate point. Crescendo doesn't hand you a finished synth. It hands you an entire workshop. It gives you the absolute fundamental components of sound, the oscillators, the logic, the control. And it just says, okay, the blueprint is yours. Go build something. So that's the question it leaves you with. And yeah, it's a big one, maybe even a little bit intimidating. But it shifts your thinking away from just making presets and puts you squarely in the world of true instrument design. When your sound engine is nothing but a blank text file, the only limit, really, is your own imagination.